Okay, yeah, okay, I think we're live. Hey, everybody, welcome to Work Your Recovery in the Developing Church. I am Devon. I'm the Pastoral Counselor at Warfare of Grace, and I work with men that are in sexual addiction all the time. That's what I do, 100% of the time. Well, almost 100% of the time. I'm also a father of 6, so that's what I'm doing the other percentage of the time. Yeah, welcome. We're going to practice some spiritual disciplines today. For our message today, we're going to be focusing on intentionality, strategy. What does that mean? Not what does it mean as much as how is it really truly beneficial in addiction? I feel like in recovery, a lot of people they don't really consider the real benefit of being intentional. And as somebody who's a little hyperactive, a little snappy, it can be very helpful, very, very, very helpful to be intentional in recovery. And I think we all know that kind of implicitly, but I want to talk about explicitly why it's important. So we'll get there. Let's start, however, with emptying the self, which is our journaling practice that we do every week on Work Your Recovery. So this is a chance. You're going to have 10 minutes. I'm going to play some music. Your goal is just to write down everything. By everything, I mean anything in your head. Anything in your head. Probably not a storyline, but besides that, if you're a book writer or if you're a writer for a living, not work, but what's inside coming out onto the page. I'm going to get right to it because I want the stream to, get through things pretty quickly. If you would, like and subscribe and all that stuff, please do. I want this community to be able to grow and for us to be able to practice disciplines together. If you know anything about me, you know that this is me. I'm moving pretty quick this morning, so I'm looking forward to slowing down with y'all today. So let's start with emptying the self. I'm going to start the music. You'll have 10 minutes. Grab a journal. Grab something to write with. Let's pour our hearts out. And don't forget that this is an opportunity. It's a form of prayer. So feel free to pray all these things to God as you're writing them. All right, here we go. Journaling can be a funny thing because you can realize that even though you told everyone you were talking to talk to God, you were not actually talking to God. Isn't that funny? Anyway, I hope you are feeling a little bit processed, a little bit come down. Let's go and move into a time of self-assessment. This is a chance for you to pull out your recovery materials and work on whatever assessment tool you use. I use a faster scale to go and fill one of those out. As you know, Work to Your Recovery is about doing your recovery in real time. So join me. Let's do this discipline together. Pull out our self-assessment and do it. Mine's down here. We're going to take 10 minutes for it. Here we go. Well, sorry that took a little extra long. I I needed to take a little extra time to assess. Let's keep going. We're moving into our time of breathing. And as you know, breathing is a huge part of calming down the body. So now that we've gotten some information out and we've kind of analyzed where we're at, let's take the time to bring ourselves to a really good place. So we're going to spend 6 minutes breathing. You can take about the first minute to kind of wrap up your writing, your journaling, your assessment, whatever you want to do there. And then when you're ready, get into a comfortable seated position, feet flat on the floor, hands on your knees or just relaxed shoulders. And we're going to take deep diaphragmatic breaths. So breaths from the belly, nice and deep. And I even now, did you see that? I couldn't even take in a full breath because I haven't been deeply breathing today. So this will be good for me too. Let's go ahead and begin. I'm going to start the music and you'll have about 6 minutes to breathe with me. Remember, the breaths should be long, like 10 to 12 seconds. Here we go. Man, some good stuff can happen while you're breathing. That's for sure. Today, for our time of meditation, we're going to the Sermon on the Mount. So we're going to be in Matthew 5. And I forgot to pull it up here beforehand, so sorry about that. Today, we're just going to read from the Beatitudes. Hope the stream's okay. Reading from the Beatitudes, we're going to start at Matthew 5, verse 3. Yeah. As we're reading these, this week, we're just going to read it multiple times. I'm going to do it not in voices, but I'll do it a little bit different every time. And as you're listening, grab your journal, have it next to you, make notes, write down things that are interesting. Let these words fill you back up now that we've kind of emptied ourselves out through empty the self and breathing and assessment. Matthew 5, starting in verse 3, says, "Blessed are those who are poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are those who mourn, for they shall be comforted. Blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they shall be satisfied." I learned it as filled years ago. Blessed are the merciful, for they shall receive mercy. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called the sons of God. Blessed are those who are persecuted for righteousness' sake, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are you when you and others revile you and persecute you and utter all kinds of evil against you falsely on my account. Rejoice and be glad, for your reward is great in heaven. For so they persecuted the prophets who were before you. Again, Matthew 5:3 says, "Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are those who mourn, for they shall be comforted. Blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they shall be satisfied. Blessed are the merciful, for they shall receive mercy. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called sons of God. Blessed are those who are persecuted for righteousness' sake, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are you when others revile you, and persecute you, and utter all kinds of evil against you falsely on my account. Rejoice and be glad, for your reward is great in heaven, for so they persecuted the prophets who were before you." At this point, maybe something's coming to your mind, something that you want to write down. I know it is for me. I'm going to take just a minute, and I'll read it one more time. Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are those who mourn, for they shall be comforted. Blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they shall be satisfied. Blessed are the merciful, for they shall receive mercy. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called sons of God. Blessed are those who are persecuted for righteousness' sake, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are you when others revile you and persecute you and utter all kinds of evil against you falsely on my account. Rejoice and be glad, for your reward is great in heaven. So they persecuted the prophets who were before you. All right, well, we're about to take our break. I hope that was good. Write down anything you're thinking about, anything that's coming to you. I was really just struck again by those who are pure in heart. They will see God. I think that one gets me because I recognize that in addiction recovery, we are desperately deceptive. And the reality that I lived through was like in getting deep into that deception, I definitely felt that. It's like I could not see God anywhere. And I want to encourage you, if you're someone who is struggling through addiction and you're kind of wondering about that, if you're wondering about why you can't see God anywhere, I want to encourage you to work on your heart. Not work on your heart like, hey, you're a bad person and slap, slap, slap. Not like that. But just work on your heart like, okay, I'm going to take an inventory of how honest I am with myself. Pure in heart. When I hear pure in heart, I definitely hear purity like a sense of not sinful, but I also hear kind of maybe that idea of focused, that idea of singular. You know, I later in scripture, when you hear phrases like the double-minded man and things like that, I think a pure heart is one that is after God, but it's one that is uninhibited by the things that could crud it up, right? So sounds to me like someone who is pure in heart might have an honest heart. Now, maybe that whole web of ideas is kind of, I don't know, might be foreign, or maybe you don't see it that way. But it certainly has been that way in my life, where as I have rejected lies, God has become more and more evident to me and more manifest to me. And I am so thankful that He is. That changes life, man. It changes the way you live. It's awesome. Okay, so that's an encouragement for you. Like if you're feeling like you just can't see God, an encouragement to work on your heart, not like to produce certain emotions or that sort of thing, but to go in and examine whether or not you're honest with yourself. And in rejecting those lies, we'll see if God becomes more evident to you. I think it's interesting too that it says that the pure in heart, they shall see God. It doesn't say they will. I used the word manifest a minute ago. We don't manifest God. God does His thing already, right? So maybe that wasn't the best word usage on my part, but we don't make God show up. He's already doing His thing. And so these are the people who see Him. They're the ones who see Him, see what He's already doing. So that's cool. All right, an encouragement to you. If you're here and you're working on your disciplines and you're trying to become the kind of person that does this regularly, and oh man, disciplines are hard. But if you're that guy or gal, I just want to say to you, welcome. I want to say, I hope you do this all the time. You know, commit to engaging with Work Your Recovery, or just even just engaging with your disciplines. This is a place for you to hold yourself accountable to doing those things. And I also want to encourage you that doing this in community is fantastic. So if you're not in a community somewhere, you're trying to get healed up, but you're not really, you haven't landed, let's take care of that. Heck, contact me. I'll help you take care of it. Just, it's time to get in a group, get with some community so that you can have some people who can love you in real time. That's really important for addiction recovery. Okay, we're going to take a little break. About 5 minutes, and we'll be back. I'm going to talk just a little bit about making strategies for recovery. We'll do just a little bit of that, and then we'll move on to the rest of our disciplines, including but not limited to confession, repentance, and gratitude. Then a couple Q&A questions at the end. All right, we'll catch you in 5 minutes. Hello, we are back. Okay, so for our conversation today, we're going to talk about why it's important to make a strategy for addiction recovery. Now, the question I'm really answering here is there's an implicit question underneath a lot of people's working on their addiction, which goes something like this. Why do I have to do all this work? Right? Now, the why I have to do all this work, I think, has different troubles to it. First off, there might be a measure of just not understanding how important this is. There might be a priority issue. That's not actually what I'm talking about today. Today, what I'm talking about is why do I have to do this specific kind of work? So addiction recovery, if you've noticed, if you've been in addiction recovery for any amount of time, addiction recovery is, man, I'll tell you what, for whatever reason, my eyes look weird today. Okay. Addiction recovery, if you've noticed, is a highly structured, highly intentional practice of changing your entire lifestyle. Now, that is like a massive undertaking to change your entire lifestyle. In addiction recovery, even more so, because you're not just changing everything you do, you're changing why you do it. And so the complete rewrite of our life, that's literally what we're talking about. Now, certain things don't necessarily have to get rewritten. You probably have some very good beliefs about this, that, or the other thing. You know, just some good beliefs, some good practices. You know, maybe you're pretty good with money, but you're really good or really bad with alcohol. You know, like this can totally be the case. So there's going to be lots of shifts, a whole life rewrite, but some beliefs will remain. You know, there's some things that won't end up being touched. The problem with asking the question, or the problem with having trouble with this kind of work, this intentional work, is that it keeps us outside of the ability to actually change. Okay, let me stop talking generalities and we'll get down to it. So, addiction is categorically a brain problem. And what that means is that as we engage in our addiction, we change the structure of our brain, particularly the structure of the reward system of our brain, and sometimes people also call it the survival system of our brain. These two are, you know, deeply connected, right? Of course, imagine that. The brain is connected. Yeah, it is funny because you can't really talk about one part of the brain without referencing the whole thing. You know, it's all kind of tied together, but at the same time, there are different, you know, structures through different paths. I digress. The point is, the reward system of the brain, survival system of the brain, they're very, very much connected. The reward system of the brain develops this connection to whatever it is that you're using to cope with life. Remember, addiction is how you cope and make life normal, make life work. It's how you swim through the ocean of life, and it solves problems for you. So, you know, a very helpful question you can ask if you're just not sure why you can't give up your addiction, a very healthy question to ask is, what is it giving me? What is it doing for me? You know? Because, like, a lot of us want to just condemn our addictions entirely. And I'll be clear. I think addictions are bad. You can say they are bad. However, that doesn't mean they don't do anything for us, you know. Sin gives us something, right? What is that? And in addiction terms, because it helps us move through life, we'll be able to identify some behind the wrong. We'll be able to identify some need that the wrong is somehow addressing. That's not to say it's addressing it particularly well. That's just to say that it is addressing it. It's kind of like a pretty obvious example here would be in terms of eating. We all need to eat, right? We all need to eat. We all have that need. But if we just eat 20 pizzas a day, you know, if that's our entire nutrition system, probably a problem, right? And if I create that kind of connection to it, probably a problem. So we've got a brain problem, a restructured brain problem. And I love to talk in terms of structures in the brain because that also helps us think about structures to get out of those structures. You know, we have to break down those structures and create new ones. That's really what we're trying to do. So we're trying to get in our head, identify where it's been rewritten, and then write a new one. Here's the problem. You can't just write a new one. You can't just suddenly have a different structure. The brain writes new pathways over time. The more times you do those pathways, the more likely you are to go down them naturally. And since addiction has taken over all of your natural desires, It's taken over all your natural directions. That's very difficult. That is an intentional act. Think about it this way. If you live in a particular town and construction suddenly goes up on a road you take to work, if you're not careful, you'll accidentally drive into that construction every time and be like, oh, shoot, I forgot. It's right here. I got to turn here and I got to go around, right? What do we do? What do we do when there's construction on the way to work? Well, as we're getting into the car, we go right, and I've got to make sure I take a left and we make that decision. That is intentional restructuring to avoid the issue. With addiction, the hard part is that so much of it is happening behind the scenes, happening in our subconscious, and just kind of like that inner engine of the mind is going, right? Because it's happening behind the scenes, our intentional choices don't always end up as intentional behaviors. However, we will never get away from our subconscious choices if we don't intentionally bring them up and choose something else, because our brain's just going to take us down that well-worn path, that path that's constantly gone down. Some thoughts. So, strategic planning engages the prefrontal cortex. So, as you may know, you got different parts of the brain. One of them is the prefrontal cortex. It's your thinker. It's your area of higher reasoning. It's your moral-o-meter. It's the part of you that makes you, able to enact free will. Frankly, if we want to use kind of a biblical angle on it, the prefrontal cortex being engaged is not normal in addiction processes. Think about this. Your brain has the ability to produce addiction in you without you ever thinking about it. That's part of the problem. You have a lifestyle wrapped around this addiction. So we have to engage our prefrontal cortex to take hold of things that already exist in our brain that are already taking us down the path to addiction. And a plan will do that. So intentional planning out of your day, intentional engagement, kind of mapping out the things you're going to do, everything from daily activities to weekly activities to the way you're going to go to bed, to the way you're going to get up, to the kinds of things you're going to say to yourself, to all these sorts of things. Thinking about those things and implementing a strategy for them engages the prefrontal cortex, which is the only way to write a new pathway. Okay? If we don't intentionally take a different pathway, which I'll just be real. I think the thinking about it and the making of a plan is the beginning of a new pathway. Like, please don't get discouraged if you're like, you're making plans, you're having to remake plans, and sometimes it's not working. Hey, don't get discouraged about that. Keep doing that. Keep making plans and learn how to be someone who makes a plan and then does that. Low key, that's kind of what we're trying to do with the recovery, right? We're trying to not go to a certain place. We're trying to go to a different place. And planning is how we get that done. So you're starting the process of creating a different road when you plan. And we need that prefrontal cortex to do that. Otherwise, our brain will just go the way it goes because so much of it is happening behind the scenes. All right, that's enough of that. Let's see. What haven't I said yet? So strategies also give us the ability to actually answer the need that is behind the addiction. So think about it this way. If I don't strategize, then I don't do whatever the addiction is. So let's say I'm a drinker and I decide I'm not going to go drinking tonight, right? So I go home instead of going to my normal spot where I would do something like that. When I go home, what's that experience going to be like? Well, it's probably going to be horrible. It's going to suck. Why? Well, let's take a stab at it. Let's guess maybe this particular drinker, maybe the thing they get out of drinking is the community of people that are at the bar, the sense of community that they get from being there, the sense of belonging that they get from being there. Guess what? That's kind of important. And you know that. We know that. That's important. It's important to be known and loved and accepted and engaged with. It's important to have people around. It's important to know that someone cares about you. That's a huge thing to give up. I wish my camera was back farther. You could see my huge arms on either, my arms going out like this. Anyway, doesn't matter. That's a huge thing to give up for not taking a drink one night, right? So a plan like go home and sit and do nothing is not a plan, right? Just not doing the addiction doesn't really help. If you plan what you're going to do, if you strategize, you can take the time to identify what it is that the addiction is actually giving you and plan to do that. So maybe this guy needs to go have a board game night with some friends. Maybe this guy needs to go skiing. I don't know. Pick a thing. Bowling league. There's all sorts of opportunities for you to get into, community environments where you feel like you belong. So that's awesome. That's an option for him. Okay. Next, I just want to put a note on here about the kind of work. So people might ask, why do I have to do this kind of work? Where I have to write down a bunch of stuff, and I have to plot out my past, and I have to create addiction matrices, and I've got to do self-assessments, and I've got to do all this stuff. Why am I doing all that stuff? First off, I get it. I'm a hyperactive guy. My favorite part about school was listening to the information, not doing the homework. I love growth, but it is hard to dig into deep stuff and get it on paper and organize thoughts and all of that. Well, the reason why we're doing that, it has at least 3 reasons. I wrote down 3. So number one of the primary ways to engage with personal health is through mental health. And I don't mean mental health like the mental health clinic, like the category of mental health. I mean mental health like brain health. I mean growing in knowledge, growing in thought, growing in that sense of revelation is like, oh yeah, and keeping your mind fresh. Like you're learning fresh information. That's a great way to keep a sense of health in the body. Your brain needs to be stimulated. It needs to be engaged so that it stays vibrant and alive. If it does not, it will become a rut machine. It will become a habit machine, right? And you'll run out those habits and they'll start to feel meaningless and purposeless, and they'll be just like, no, why am I here? And those kinds of feelings. So instead, we engage intellectually. We grow. And I think personally, when Scripture says something like, love the Lord your God with all your mind, I think like God knew what he was talking about. This is part of why he mentions this. It's like, look, your mind needs to be engaged with going further on and further in. Hey, C.S. Lewis, for that phrase. Further on and further in to Christ. As you do that, your brain will be more active, more alive, more ready to engage. You'll have a healthier sense in your brain. You'll feel more alive. Okay. So let's see. The second reason we need to do this kind of work is because we really need to be able to review. I don't know if you've noticed, but people that are in addiction often have tons of trouble with their memory. They are very consumed with the thoughts of addiction and often have no idea how consumed they are with it. So when we write it down, we have the opportunity to go back and look. It is amazing to me. You've probably experienced this. So we're all busy people. We go to a recovery group, we write down what we're going to do that week, and then 6 days later, the night before group, we're going, what did I even commit to? And we're looking back like, oh, right, yeah. We are forgetful. And addicts have it even worse because they're consumed with that constant influx of desire and constant influx of focus towards their addiction, because addiction produces lifestyle. So having things written down, having a strategy, on paper, and being able to read a story you told about yourself before. There's one a little sidebar. There's one particular homework assignment. That's what I'm looking for. There's one particular homework assignment where you write your story, right? And you write it in categories like, different sections of your life. I have done that particular assignment probably 8 times. And every time I write it, it writes a little different. But every time I write it, it gets a little more holistic too, like it gets bigger and that sort of thing. It's been interesting watching what things fell off in my story of myself and that sort of thing. Here's my point. Your story is not well understood by you. It's not well understood. And it's important for you to be able to look at one story you wrote and look at the next one and be like, now wait a second, why did me at this point leave out those things? And so reviewing who you are is really important for bringing up the necessary content that is informing your addiction. So why do this type of work? This type of work where you're writing letters to yourself and you're doing all these assessments and stuff, it's so you can track who you are. Think about that. Think about the value. If you're a person who is not singularly minded, like, Scripture says the double-minded man is driven and tossed by the winds, right? If you're not singularly minded, like if you don't have the ability to engage with God and do as you say you will do, like if you're addicted, then you're switching between types of person all the time. You are becoming a different person all the time. And we can see this as we go through the process of going towards acting out. We start as one person, often kind of vibrant, feeling pretty good relationship with God, and then we drift and we drift and we drift. We end up down here. Man, it's 3 a.m. I am so tired. I am depressed. Everything sucks. I can't see God. And all the people in between those two places. So when you do your homework and when you do your journaling and when you do all these things, you're writing down. It's like, it's like making a picture of where you are right there. And taking time to review all that will give you insights into what you need to do to really get recovered. How to put all those pieces to your story together and create good answers. Okay, so why do we do this work? So that we can review it. That's what we just talked about. Yeah. Here's the next one. Why do we actually do this write it down work? Well, writing it down does actually rewire the brain. So I love using the term externalizing. One of my favorite things to do is to get people to externalize whatever it is that's going on inside of them. A lot of cool things happen along the way when you externalize something. P.S. This is not a comprehensive list. Oh my gosh, we could go on forever about why we should be intentional and stuff like that. But, so why do we do this kind of work? As we externalize, some cool stuff happens. 1, here's the phrase, it becomes more real. When we take information that's inside of us and we write it down, our relationship to that information changes. Suddenly, we're seeing it not in ourselves, but outside of ourselves. It's the difference between robbing a bank and watching someone rob a bank. We have just a different relationship to it. And that little bit of distance that we get from that information can suddenly bring into clarity social cues and moral realities and obvious things. You may have done an exercise kind of like this where you think about, what would you say to that little kid who was hurt so many years ago, this sort of thing. When we do that, we externalize the very words that we need when they become real, and then that can come back to us. That's super healthy. Next, journaling is actually a part of rewiring the brain. The brain is coding what you're doing as an experience. So, why are we writing everything down? Why are we doing this? We're doing it because as we do it, it becomes an experience that our brain can code as meaningful and will fight against the experiences, the meaningful experiences that have produced our addiction. Remember, the body remembers what you go through, that is good or bad. The body codes it as more or less significant, more or less dangerous, right? And it will take the sum total of those things and produce outcomes from it. At the end of the day, we do want to change our brain. We want to get to the point where our brain naturally produces healthy things. Now our habit structures and our addiction structures are leading us down a path to healthy coping mechanisms. That's what we want. When you journal, when you work on hard homework, when you do this kind of intentional work, when you make a plan, that's what you're doing. You are shoot. That happens sometimes where my brain just goes Oh, you're giving yourself an experience. Giving yourself an experience of recovery in real time. So that's incredibly beneficial. Just out of this world beneficial. And your goal should be to stack up as many of those as possible. This is also why, and I'll just punt this one in here. This is also why your recovery has to happen every day. It can't just happen every once in a while. And it should not be happening the day before your counseling session or the day before your group session or anything like that. Your recovery needs to happen every single day so that your brain receives an experience of recovery every single day. And you start building up that weight of goodness against the weight of your addiction. Okay? So externalizing things is a way in which to give yourself an experience of recovery. Now, maybe you hate it, but I just want to encourage here. I've met a lot of dudes that start this process and they hate it at first, and then they hate it at the end. I want to tell you about this weird dynamic I've seen, and I definitely have experienced it too. I'm not gonna pretend like I haven't. Here's what I see. Guy gets into recovery. He wants to change, but then he sees all the work. Looks overwhelming. Too much. Not normal for him to do this kind of work. Fair enough. That's stressful. He will at first set himself to it kind of begrudgingly, like, man, like, okay, yeah, okay. I guess if this is what I got to do, right? Then somewhere, maybe a month into doing this, maybe sometimes even shorter, like 2 weeks, 3 weeks, he'll say something like, man, this one really hit me this week, and blah, 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 blah. He'll go on about how introspection and putting things down on the page and doing the homework and doing the work of it has been so good for him, and man, this is really great. And then we pass about 4 months of that. And eventually, we're feeling a little better. You know, things are going a little better. I've learned some stuff. How long is this going to take? You know, I'm on the 10th floor of a 30-floor elevator. You know, come on, man. And they start to not like it again. And they start to not like it, I think, personally, because their level of comfort has significantly increased. And they have not learned this critical truth. Their life will never be free from addiction so long as they reject the essential nature of working on it every single day, of staying healthy every single day. We don't get to go back to operating the way we once did. We don't want to, we don't want what we once were. And at some point we have to shift over on that. It's hard because we don't always receive revelation. We don't always feel like, man, that homework was great, Sometimes it downright sucks, and we don't want to continue in that. There's a marathon element to this, and that's fair enough. So I just want to encourage you. If you're looking to make a long-term change in your brain, besides the fact that you need to be thinking years, not months. Years, not months. You can have a lot of success in months. You can have a lot of results. Look at that. I got a little alfalfa thing going on back here. That's awesome. On YouTube for all to see. You can have a lot of success in months, and it can be really, really good. But if you want to have long-term success, Years. Years of consistency. And for guys like me, that is insanely hard. I can't stay consistent for 10 minutes. It seems to be. So, what I want to encourage you to do is create this structure around you, create the accountability around you so that you can perform the things you need to perform and receive that revelation. Don't let yourself out of it. You can have a pre-decision, a strategy even, that will keep you from giving up. You can do that. And you can put people in your life who will help you to keep from giving up. All right, I hope that all makes sense. I'm going to give you guys just a second to write down anything you thought as we were talking about that. It's going to be about 2 minutes. And I actually forgot to go refill my coffee, so I'm going to go do that. And I'll be back in a couple minutes for the rest of our session. All right. Be right back. I'm going to go ahead and go to the slideshow for 2 minutes. We'll be back. Have I been muted this entire time? Oh my word, guys. Well, I hope my hand gestures were just so intriguing. Oh my goodness. Yeah. Friends, I'm going to be done for the day. I hope you have an awesome one. You're loved. I'm going to answer these questions some other time. You're loved. Have a good one.